faces while I'm sharing.
Recording is on.
Cool. Cool. Awesome to have everyone here today. This is going to be our second DEX community call. We had the first one end of last year, and basically want to use this as an opportunity to present on updates of the new exchange that will be launched by GnosisDAO in the next couple of months. And yeah, basically, the meeting is going to give you a demo and also give some updates about recent developments, and is open to a Q&A. Everyone who has questions, just feel free to interrupt and ask, or otherwise just drop them in the chat. And
Anna, maybe I can just quickly say that the product will likely be launched by GnosisDAO, but we still have to put it through the governance phase. So we would encourage anyone who is excited about the product that we're going to show you guys today to come out and vote when the time comes.
Cool, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there is already an ongoing proposal in the GnosisDAO forum that also contains a lot of details, technical details about how this exchange would work. So we recommend everyone to get engaged in that discussion as well. And we will also share the link to that forum discussion later on. Yeah, I would say let's kick it off with a quick overview of how the exchange actually works. And that's going to be given by Alex, who is the lead in our communications department around our DEX offering.
Yes. Well, as you can see on the picture, basically the protocol is divided into two ways of interacting with it, one off-chain and one on-chain. This is more or less a very high-level overview of how the protocol will work. But basically, off-chain, what we have is that the user using the wallet would sign an order and broadcast it to all the solvers. Then the solvers collect the orders in batches, and make ring trades that maximize possibly the trader's worth. Then those solutions that the solvers have crafted are submitted to the Gnosis Protocol, and then here we are on chain, and then the Gnosis Protocol executes all the transactions and interacts with the DeFi protocol, and then returns the results to both the solvers and the users.
Is that so far clear, or are there any questions about here already? Cool. I take that as it's clear.
Where can we find definitions for things like solvers?
Sorry, I didn't catch that question.
The definition for solvers is in the documentation in Gnosis. GnosisDAO in the Gnosis Protocol sub website, I would say, and there you have like an introduction. But basically, a solver is anyone that runs a program that optimizes the best solution for the trade to settle, like for all the trades that are happening in the DEX.
Yeah, Alex, maybe you can also drop a link to somewhere where we have it described more, in more detail, and you can drop that link in the chat as well. But is that clear enough for the understanding of continuing, or should we go into more detail right now?
Maybe I could say a little bit on top of this diagram while we have it here. So these orders, which are collected off-chain, are being matched as well as they can together with them amongst themselves via the solvers. But the solvers is also aware of existing on-chain liquidity sources such as Uniswap, SushiSwap. And so whatever unfilled amounts are not matched directly with the offline orders will be sort of fulfilled through existing on-chain liquidity sources.
Did it answer your question? Because then I would propose let's jump right into the demo. That is actually quite neat to better understand how the user experience would be. And yeah, I guess it will add some more clarity on how the protocol works. Then I would give the screen sharing, hand this over to Felix, who is actually one of the tech leads of the exchange. And yeah, he's gonna dive right into the demo.
Yeah, so right now we have a very first kind of prototype of the mechanism running on XDAI. The front end has been forked from Uniswap. As you can see, it's very similar to what you're used to on Uniswap. Basically, it's a simple swap interface where you can choose your sell token and your buy token. The kind of Uniswap clone on XDAI is called HoneySwap. And the liquidity on HoneySwap is not great, but it has some XDAI specific tokens, such as, for example, the stake token and wrapped XDAI, which is basically the WETH version on XDAI. So the native token XDAI wrapped into an ERC20. And so what we can do is we can, for example, trade, let's say, one wrapped XDAI for stake. Oh, I have insufficient balance. Okay, let's take everything we have, 81 cents. It will tell us how much estimated amount we get. This amount is actually the same amount that you would get on Uniswap if you traded the same amount at the same time on Uniswap. And if this was your first time on the exchange, you would also have to approve your token similar to how you do it on Uniswap. However, afterwards, after you have approved the token, everything else happens gasless. So when we press swap here, it tells us again kind of what is the price impact, what is the minimum amount we're supposed to get, what is the expected amount. And if we confirm, instead of actually having to sign a transaction, all we have to do is sign a message. And that message will be sent to the backend and is kind of our off-chain order. And now to also demonstrate kind of the batching aspect of it, let's at the same time author and order in the opposite direction. So let's say here we want to sell 0.1 stake for some XDAI. So we click swap, and then if we sign here and we also sign here, then both of our orders have been submitted. Now they are not yet visible in the mempool just because they are right now in the process of being collected by our off-chain solver, and the off-chain solver will come up with a solution, hopefully matching these two orders against one another and trading the excess on HoneySwap. And as soon as the settlement is submitted, we should get an alert here that our trade has been settled. This might take a few seconds. And while we are planning to add a nice block explorer that can also show you kind of where your transaction is at, even if it's not yet submitted on chain, so that you can see, okay, it has been submitted to the solver has found a solution with it, and it's now just waiting for it to be submitted, or kind of what state your transaction is in. And drum roll. Well, if until this, I'm not entirely sure why it's not matching, but I can show it. Just before this call, I did a similar trade, so we can look at a solution that we have. So let me make this big. Token transfers. "16 minutes ago, I think this is it. So this should be, yeah, this is a solution that I submitted just before the start of the call to see if the demo works, and it did work. I'm not sure why it's not working now. But basically here you can see the first two transactions are transferring out the sell amounts of the two users that are participating in a batch. So we have 2 transfers to the Gnosis Protocol V2 settlement contract. That's this contract with 0x4e. Then the settlement contract is trading with Uniswap. That is this token transfer right here. And the token transfer next is basically Uniswap, or HoneySwap in this case, transferring back some tokens. The key thing to note here is that we are only trading a very small amount of stake. So while the total order is trying to sell 0.01 stake, the amount that we're trading with Uniswap is only a small fraction of that. The remainder of the stake token is matched directly against the other user order. And as we can then see, we are transferring out the proceeds in the last step to the users. So the E0B address gets their XDAI, so they traded stake for XDAI. And the 0xB9 address is getting stake, and they put in XDAI. And the advantage here is that for the amount that is not traded against Uniswap, we can actually use the spot price of Uniswap without the 0.3% slippage. So, or kind of the liquidity provider fee. And so we can actually guarantee, or we can actually provide a much better price to the traders that happen to find themselves in a batch. Cool. I don't think this demo is going to go through. So sorry about that. We have a demo video here where it actually works end to end. We can link this at the end. But yeah, you can also, I think you can try it out on XDAI. It should be working most of the time. Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for the demo. Typical that always in those moments something doesn't end up working. But yeah, anyone who's interested to trying this out, it's currently deployed on XDAI. Like Felix mentioned, obviously it will be deployed to mainnet. Is there any questions about the demo already? You can just also always drop questions that you have in the chat, or just unmute yourself. You can always interrupt us. Okay, otherwise, let me screen share again. So 1 second. Cool. Yeah. So the next part is basically, we have obviously, since I mentioned at the beginning, we have had a previous DEX community call. This is the second one. And we have made quite some progress since the last time. So we would take now a couple of minutes in giving you updates about what we have been working on the last couple of weeks. And this update will be given by Ben, who is one of our core mathematicians behind the DEX mechanism.
Hello there. So although there's a lot of development happening in this project, I chose to go with the top 3 important facts. So our smart contracts are essentially ready for audit. We should be sending them off to the auditors by the end of next week. In terms of milestone-wise, there's really only about 2 tasks remaining on the smart contracts. The specs, so this is a front-end related thing. We talked about this Batch Explorer. Since a lot of things are happening off-chain, we'll have a sort of Etherscan-like place where you can see all the contents related to the Gnosis protocol itself. This link here will take you to another slideshow you can take a look at that highlights the specs for this Batch Explorer. And
Ben, quick question. Do you want me to click on it, or should people just do it in their own time?
We could take a little look.
Okay. Let me just change my screen sharing, because I think I'm only sharing that particular.
We can also just share the link in the chat here.
Okay, fair enough. Good. Let me do that. All right. But also screen share, just use my entire browser. That should work. Cool. Ben, can you?
Whoa.
Whoa, this is a. Yeah, let me maybe just share. Interesting feature. Okay, Ben. Yeah, I would say everyone can open that if you want to speak about this, and I will keep sharing just the presentation.
Yeah, that's okay. So third big update that's happening right now is this database. So this database will allow users to place their orders, collect the orders there, and of course expose a way for solvers and probably anyone else, of course the Batch Explorer as well, to query the existing orders, fetch them in order to solve batches. And the database is on track. Those are the most relevant updates for now.
Cool. Yeah, are there any questions about these updates? Otherwise, I would say let's move to the Q&A. We have been collecting a couple of questions over the past week. However, we want the section to be more interactive. So we would really appreciate there's no dumb questions. If there's any questions that you have, maybe something that was unclear from what we previously tried to explain, or some feature that we didn't explain yet, just feel free to voice it. Also, any criticism is very welcome. So the idea behind this and why we are making this product development so public is really to get feedback from the community early. So yeah, feel free to share any of the thoughts you have either now in this call or later on in the forum post. I would say otherwise, while you still collect your thoughts, we can start with a couple of questions that we collected over the last week. One that was asked, I guess also based on the history about Gnosis exchanges, when we basically launched a Dutch exchange, trading time was taking kind of long with 6 hours. So one of the questions that was asked now is how much time it will actually take for a trade on this new DEX that we are building to be executed. I'm not sure, Ben or someone else who would like to take this question and answer in more detail.
I'll take this one. So, I mean, we're expecting that these batches should take around 1 minute to execute a batch. However, technically, the protocol itself doesn't really prevent a batch from being settled in every block. This 1 minute that we've estimated for just allows time to collect the orders. And the longer that you wait for order collection, the more likelihood there will be a coincidence of wants. And thus, the protocol can actually provide traders with better prices than existing DEXs. Of course, we also need to allow some time for solvers to match these trades. And then, of course, the time for the transaction to be mined afterwards. However, like we mentioned, the protocol itself doesn't prevent a batch from being settled in every block.
Cool. Yeah, basically, to summarize, I think to put it very easily, the idea is that the trading experience of a user on this exchange is similar to the trading experience on a different exchange and not taking significantly longer. Yeah, another question that was that came in is about which liquidity sources can this protocol tap into. Whoever wants to answer, just
I can answer. I mean, at first we will start with tapping liquidity from Uniswap, SushiSwap, and 0x order, but this is not bound to all these protocols. Like technically, Gnosis protocol can tap into any on-chain liquidity sources as long as they are configured. So basically all of them. But of course, like it will be gradient. First we'll start with some and we'll keep adding more.
Yeah, exactly. So basically it can even tap into the liquidity of DEX aggregators such as 1inch. So there's basically no limits to the liquidity resources we can tap into, and theoretically could also be extended and even include other tokens such as, for example, conditional tokens. But yeah, the aim for the launch is to focus on a few AMMs And then the idea is also to get feedback from the users, which liquidity sources, which AMMs they would actually be most interested in having integrated as well.
I think one other thing we could add. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question regarding the last question. Let's say some projects, like, I don't know, an AMM project would like to integrate as well. Do we have like the what is the process of letting Gnosis Protocol draw liquidity from another liquidity source? Is it something that I don't know, a community member has enough information to look into and do it themselves? Or eventually, maybe later?
I guess to repeat the question, your question is whether those community members themselves could be adding other liquidity resources to Gnosis Protocol rather than waiting for the GnosisDAO to build the integration. I guess that's...
Yeah, exactly.
I guess from the way, I think at the beginning, it's basically the proper process of how this is done is to be defined. Overall, obviously, as always, we are building open source. But how the community can vote, I guess one option is that the community members can always make a proposal in the GnosisDAO forum and give reasons for why they want a specific AMM being integrated. And if the majority consensus of the community is that this AMM should be integrated, then the GnosisDAO will take this proposal forward and will make sure that it's going to be integrated. So that's one way how it can definitely, how definitely the community will be able to, make this happen. Overall, I think the governance mechanism beside the DEX is not fully decided. That is something where also the GnosisDAO will come up with a proposal and share it in the forum and hopefully from community members. Sorry, do you hear that background noise? Yeah, super, thank you. And yeah, basically we'll share some thoughts about the potential governance process around the Gnosis Protocol in the forum, and also actively wants community members to help shape this.
But maybe to add here that long term, we do want the protocol to be completely permissionless and allow kind of external parties to provide completely autonomous solvers as well. And so for that, we have not fully decided on the mechanism how to implement it. Just one idea that's floating around would be that you have to stake a certain amount of tokens in order to become a solver as an entity. And then the question around which liquidity sources should be included can become kind of an open competition between solvers. So if a more conservative solver maybe doesn't include certain liquidity sources because it doesn't trust them or doesn't think they are useful most of the time, then that is totally up to them. But if a more kind of aggressive part of the community wants to build or contribute to a solver that tries to use the latest and greatest in liquidity sources, that is also fine. Yeah, and then what you said, I think is correct. Like for now, if you have your protocol and you want to integrate it into the kind of default solver that we are running at the moment, well, the easiest way would be to do a pull request in GitHub or get basically us to prioritize this integration. But yeah, eventually we want this to be an open, completely permissionless competition.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. Ren, is that answering the question?
Yes, definitely. I think it's yeah, obviously getting to a point where anyone can become a solver will be very interesting. But yeah, even just having some kind of process to add liquidity sources will be beneficial, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah, another question.
There was a question in the chat already from Pranit. Maybe you should prioritize.
Yeah, let's prioritize that. Cool.
So what order types are supported / not supported?
So I was in the process of answering this in the chat. I think Nick might be able to say a little more, but the protocol right now supports both buy and sell orders, partially fillable and fully fillable. Also, there are support for 0x order types. Does anyone else have anything to add with that?
So maybe fundamentally, we can differentiate between two types of orders. One are kind of protected limit orders, which can come from externally owned accounts from your MetaMask, for example, but they can also come from a smart contract wallet using EIP 1271 smart contract signatures. And those are limit buy or limit sell orders with a valid 2 timestamp, and potentially they can be partially fillable. And those are guaranteed to be only executed according to their limit price. So there you have a fixed kind of, you have the limit kind of baked into the order. The other kind of type how you could integrate with the exchange would be to make your order available as a so-called, as a somewhat on-chain liquidity source. So you could imagine a smart contract that is willing to sell a certain token for another certain token at a certain condition. In order to have that integrated into the system, you would have to either convince some of the solvers that they recognize this type of order, or potentially there might be a registry where you can basically post your smart contract orders. But for those kind of on-chain interactions, the protocol itself doesn't give you any guarantees. So you would have to bake in the limit price into your Solidity code, for example.
Pranit, is that answering the question, or do you have a follow-up question? Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, the next question that was coming in was, what are the plans to incentivize frequent trading so that the trades get the benefit of batched auctions? Maybe to add to this question, I'm not sure if everyone here is familiar because we didn't do a deep dive into this today. So the exchange benefits the coincidence of ones. So basically, if multiple parties are trading at the same time so that those trades can be batched against each other, then there is the benefit that these trades don't have to be forwarded to a third-party AMM, and hence the amount basically that you receive is a better price in the end, rather than if your trade would have been forwarded to another external AMM. And I think this is where the question arises from, asking about how we are planning to incentivize ensuring that these coincidence of ones, how they are called, are happening more frequently. Who would like to take that question?
I can take it, for example.
Cool.
I mean, we haven't decided on the final version of how the incentivized plan would be, but the ideas that are in mind is sort of to establish a happy hour where, for example, traders get like fee discounts, even like to make it like completely gas-free. This, we think that will help us achieve more coincidence of ones if we, gather all the traders together in certain specific timeframes. And then at the same time, other routes we were exploring is like other incentives, like rewarding people that successfully trade in batches. For example, if you have traded in X amount of batches straight in a row, then you get you can earn an additional token.
Yeah, I think basically there is many different ways of how we can incentivize this, and we are currently still exploring. We're basically looking for now, getting an overview about the different ways that might make sense to the user, and we will definitely launch a incentive program when the DEX is going live. The specifics we don't know yet, but they will also be published in the GnosisDAO forum. If you have specific ideas, of course, also please feel free to contribute. Otherwise, we will make a short list of the best ideas and publish them also in the forum to get more input from you guys. In the meantime, I saw there were some more questions coming up in the chat. I think they were partially answered already, but as they might be interesting to everyone, maybe let's just repeat them. YK was asking if the OWL token is playing any role in the Feeconomics, like that expression, of Gnosis Protocol. And basically, that's actually highlighting one feature that I find quite neat about Gnosis Protocol is that the price is basically, the fee is taken in the cell token. So that means that theoretically, you do not even have to hold ETH, and the trading experience is much more smooth, similar to the trading experience on centralized exchanges, meaning basically you just have to pay once, and there's no, you don't have the tediousness that other trading experience currently offer in the DEX space, where you basically have to sign a transaction and pay fee and then pay gas fees. But in this case, on Gnosis Protocol, it's all in one. The fee is just taken from the token that you're selling, and no additional costs are occurring. So it's a one-time payment, and that's it. No hidden costs anywhere. So yeah. Then let's see, was there something else that was asked in the chat? Yes.
Maybe because it fits here with the Feeconomics and OWL, the question regarding OWL. Of course, one of the questions is how we can capture value from this product for Gnosis or for GNO holders. And even though we don't plan to use OWL as a primary token to capture the fee, the general idea would probably, like, we haven't finalized anything yet. We don't know which token it will be, but we kind of still think that we can capture value for GNO or for like some token that's associated with this exchange by basically then selling the amounts that we get from the fees. Basically, the solver collects part of the fees, the other half will go to the protocol, and we can then sell this off against, may it be GNO, may it be OWL, may it be a GP token, to basically capture value from this.
Yuri, do you have more questions around the token economics?
It's clear for me now. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, what else did we get? Yeah, which tokens will be available for trading?
I'll go. So I guess essentially any ERC20 token is supported for trading at the moment. Although the best experience could possibly be with those ERC20s that have existing liquidity sources. I mean, you'll get the smoothest trading experience and a good price estimation service for those tokens which are already traded on other liquidity sources. We've even introduced partial support for native ETH in the sense that buying ETH is supported as because it is on Uniswap. However, selling ETH will require wrapping, implying 2 transactions. There is a plan to eventually support conditional tokens, although this is not something we will expect to see from the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary of that question. Next one. What are the risks associated with trading on Gnosis Protocol? And specifically, what happens if a solver goes rogue? Who wants to take the question of the solver going rogue?
I've got a few points here if nobody else wants to. So the smart contract, of course, enforces that clearing prices are respecting the user's limit prices. The solvers will be, so at some point, the solvers will be required to stake some. There will be, so what we have on the first rollout is sort of a curated solver list that the manager or the owner of the solver list will be able to add and remove solvers. So we'll start off with a short list of solvers that we know and trust, and we've written this in a way that the authentication of solvers is an upgradable contract, and we hope that, or the plan is to upgrade this in the form of a proof of stake. So there will be some staking mechanism involved in becoming a solver. And then the DAO, or a DAO, it could be GnosisDAO or it could be a different DAO, that would then be responsible for concretely defining any misbehaviors, detecting these misbehaviors by the solvers, and acting accordingly as per the staking mechanism when a solver goes rogue.
Yeah, I mean, any solver related questions, maybe if you have any, that could be good timing to ask them now. We had one at the beginning. I don't know if something is unclear. Yeah, I think Praneet just asked another one. Can there be issues with some form of wash trading with rogue solvers? Are we using any form of activity metrics associated with solvers that could stand to be gained? The question is in the chat box if anyone wants to read it again.
Yeah, my answer to this question would be that doing wash trading comes with a cost for the solvers. So because the trading fees are not going to go 100% to the solvers, but they're going to be split between the protocol and solvers. If you trade a very large amount, you will also incur a bunch of fees. On top of that, submitting solution costs gas. So it's I mean, you could wash trade, but I don't really see. Maybe you can give an example, Praneet, how you could see this actually damaging the system.
Sure. I was just wondering if there would be any instances where the DAO where the GnosisDAO might incentivize, I guess, solvers with I guess additional forms of fees that could potentially accrue to them on the basis of how well they perform, outside of, you know, the things or the fees that are obviously paid to them to settle a trade on chain. So.
Yeah, we haven't thought about how we can incentivize this decentralization, like basically multiple solvers to compete with each other yet. So we haven't really thought about an incentive program there. I guess you're totally right that if we design an incentive program, we have to make sure that the solvers are actually settling real orders and not just their own. Just maybe as a thought in this direction, one of the things that we want to avoid is that a solver just picks a subset of the orders that are in the system. That could be just their orders that they want to watch trade against one another, but it could also be just a single limit order where they think the limit is quite nice and they just settle it one-to-one with their liquidity instead of using other coins, like other people's orders, or using Uniswap or whatever other on-chain liquidity might actually give a better price than the strict limit of that order. And for this, we kind of are thinking about the criteria that we want to impose on solutions that are submitted. And one of these criteria could be that we take a canonical snapshot of the orders in the system. So basically all the orders that are signed by EOAs are publicly available. And if you submit a solution and you're deliberately not including orders that are obviously tradable, which you could measure in some form of, I mean, there's this concept of Warrajan equilibrium, which we tried to establish in Gnosis Protocol V1, where basically everyone who's trading, well, everyone is maximally happy with the solution that is submitted. That means if a price is submitted that is better than your limit price, you are actually trading. If a price that is submitted that is worse than your limit price, then you're not trading. Basically, I think another word is envy freeness. And so these are some criteria that we could employ to the entirety of the order book. And if a solver violates against, for example, envy freeness, if they just pick a single order that has a bad limit price and match it with themselves, then we would go after the staked, basically the staked amount of tokens that they need in order to become a solver in the first place.
So maybe we could point out the great benefit that we have here for with the off-chain order book in the sense that we tried to capture this this same thing in V1, but since the smart contract was only able to evaluate the objective function for the optimization problem on those orders that were touched, it was just not feasible for us to compute on chain what was happening with those orders that were not being touched, as we know, or as those who have followed the development of V1 would know. This wasn't a great metric for best solution, but now that we have the order book off chain, it's a lot easier to evaluate the objective function on the whole order set.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
There's a question from Ken that nicely, like, it's not going to be asking, do you mean front running instead of wash trading, which is a good point. I think in Gnosis Protocol V1 we also had the problem that solvers could be front run. So if you spent all the energy to compute a solution, somebody was just watching the mempool, they could take your solution and just insert it with a slightly higher gas price to kind of snatch the fees away from you. In Gnosis Protocol V2, we are envisioning to kind of decouple the fee distribution from the core smart contract logic. So the smart contract doesn't pay out any fee to the address that submits a solution. Instead, all the fees are kind of collected in the smart contract. And we expect the GnosisDAO to kind of to govern who is rewarded with the fees. And so if we have multiple solvers, we can actually have, again, maybe an off-chain kind of signaling or competition where you say, here's my solution, I attest to it off-chain. And then that means you will get the reward regardless of who is the message.sender of the actual settlement. And then front running doesn't really make sense anymore from kind of a solver perspective to snatch away the fees. I'm not sure if you were referring to front running of kind of solutions in terms of sandwiching the interactions that might be within a solution. If so, then that's maybe a bit unrelated, but we can also talk about that.
No, but that is an interesting thought. I think that leads to a different set of thoughts entirely. But no, that's actually interesting. Was kind of even thinking of trying to see if there could be primitives around providing, I guess, proofs of computational integrity that solvers might be able to kind of attest to. But yeah, that might be a step further. I see what you're proposing might actually be I guess easier to kind of potentially implement in terms of the metrics that you were kind of proposing. So that's pretty cool stuff. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, YK, maybe let's take your last question first and then the one about timeline, just because it ties in better now. What is the minimum value of trades that make sense to be solved for solvers?
Yeah, so maybe I'll take it. So I guess it really depends on we had, for context, we had the same kind of question or issue with Gnosis Protocol version 1, where gas prices were climbing, and at some point, if a trade was too small, then just the gas cost for settling on chain this order would be higher than the fees that this solver will make. So it wasn't like it didn't really make sense for the solver to settle those small orders. And in the next version, the solver still has kind of the same logic where the solver pays for the entire gas fees for settlement. And what we plan for now is maybe to cover just if the fees are high enough and order is like a huge order, then the solver will cover the gas cost. But even if a user wants to submit for any reason, even $1 order and wants it to be executed, they have the option to add a tip, what we call a tip, which basically is just another small payment to cover the gas cost. And then anyone can always make sure the order is settled.
Is it in the UI, this tip feature? Is it? Can we see it now in test UI? How to add tips to be added to next batch?
Maybe Anshu can answer this.
Yes. So the tip is kind of like voluntary thing that people will include in the orders. But of course, if it's a small order that doesn't generate fees, if you don't include a tip, you are not encouraging the solvers to include it in the solution. In answer to your question, Yuri, yes, it is so if it is not in the protocol, it's the user who decides. So it's up to the different UIs to decide or let the user choose a good tip. But for making things simpler, right now in the proof of concept, there's a service that is this operator that is an API where you submit these off-chain orders, the signed off-chain orders, what we call the meta transactions. And these same parties, these same operators have the ability to tell you what is the tip that would accept as a minimum in the sell token for considering your order. So right now in the proof of concept we have, where we ask these operators what's the minimum tip, and this is included automatically in the order you sign. And you can see the fee also when you sign the transaction. You see the fee there.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Cool, then let's take your other question now about what is the timeline for GP to launch on mainnet? Who wants to be the daredevil and make promises about a launch date?
I mean, I cannot give promises about a launch date. I can just say where we're at right now and what our kind of next milestones are. So the smart contracts are about to be finished and will be going into audit by the end of next week, likely. And kind of the biggest bottleneck at the moment is basically the off-chain solver infrastructure. There we have this XDAO demo running, and we want to move this XDAO demo to mainnet so that we can have kind of what we would call an alpha version on mainnet where you can trade against Uniswap, maybe have one external kind of market maker that already says they can offer better prices than Uniswap most of the time. For this, we're still looking at exactly what you just talked about, the fee or the tip, basically making sure that we can estimate for a given small trade what would be what do we have to charge the person to not basically make it really gas free, because at the end of the day it has to be economically viable. And there's some other kind of technical challenges around solution submission, because it has to happen quite fast. So the XDAO demo is not running on mainnet just yet. We're hoping in 3 weeks to have basically the same demo on mainnet. And from there on, I guess we will start interacting with some really early brave users and gather feedback and see kind of where we get stuck and kind of what needs to be improved. For like a big launch, we don't have a fixed date yet that we can commit to.
Yeah, let us know if you want to participate in testing.
I believe that Gnosis Protocol V2 is like a public good because everybody can cut gas costs on trading, and it can be competed to 1-inch servers nowadays. And people don't recognize this maybe, but it's a great piece of DeFi.
Yeah, that's exactly the plan. It's basically the real proper Robinhood that really gives advantages to its users. Cool, yeah. Maybe we have time for like
Can I ask a question to YK, because you've been very like passionate about the project and always giving good thoughts as well. So for even for our alpha, we are kind of you said, yes, this is our value proposition. We want to kind of get people to trade together and be stronger together. The thing that we are, like, one of the challenges we are looking at is that it is a bit, while we won't have the chicken and egg problem of liquidity that we had for Gnosis Protocol v1, because we now kind of can tap into all the on-chain liquidity, we will kind of have the chicken and egg problem of getting people to group together. So the real value of the protocol can only kind of show itself when we get a bunch of people to trade in the same batch, because otherwise it's just basically the same as if you traded with Uniswap directly. So I'm just curious if you have any ideas on how, even in an alpha or beta phase, we can kind of make this happen.
I will try XDAI version and try to write my feedback on this question.
Super, thank you. Yeah, that would be super valuable for us. Looks like my screen is frozen. If someone else wants to read out the next question. Oh. There it goes. It works. Who gets the trading, please?
So we've already kind of discussed this a little bit. Maybe since we only have one question left, we could move on to something a little more exciting.
Agree. Well, kind of this one as well, no?
Maybe the one before, I think it's very, this one, I think it's still, we can still reiterate on it. I think it's kind of, we've just really covered the front running of solutions. We haven't really covered the front running protection for individual users.
Fair enough, sounds good. Let's focus on this question then.
So yeah, kind of for a trader perspective, today, if you trade against Uniswap and you trade with other people in the same block against Uniswap, then it really depends on which transaction gets included in the block first, and all of you will get a slightly different price. And depending on in which direction the trades are going, you either want to be first or last, or, well, but likely there's actually going to be a very smart party in between that just sandwiches your trade altogether. And so the ordering of transaction is really important. In Gnosis Protocol, if your order gets batched together with other people that are trading in the same block, everyone will be guaranteed the same clearing price on the same token pair. So there's the ordering within a batch doesn't make any difference. And this is basically how individual users can be protected from front running. Of course, the batch in itself, like the entirety of a batch, is still a normal Ethereum transaction. And so that is prone to front running in itself. So if there's a very large Uniswap transaction being issued from Gnosis Protocol, some other party could try to sandwich the settlement transaction. There, kind of our thinking is that by having this coincidence of wants, so by people trading the opposite side against one another, the amount that we have to actually trade against Uniswap is getting smaller. So the opportunity for minor extractable value is also smaller. The less you trade with Uniswap, the less they can be extracted. And we also think that as a sophisticated solver, and not necessarily just us, but every sophisticated solver can probably do a better decision-making of what the right slippage tolerance is, which is in traditional Uniswap usage is how much a front runner couldn't take advantage of you. If you have 0.1% slippage, then the maximum they can kind of move the pool against your price would be 0.1%. If you choose 1% slippage, they can extract up to 1% of your trade from you. And by having kind of the control over the actual Uniswap interaction in the solver's hand, we think that we can be much more real time by looking at the mempool, looking at what is actually happening, and choose the slippage very small to also further reduce minor extractable value. And then last but not least, but of course that's kind of very far in the future, it would also be possible to much more tightly couple the solver and driver, or like basically the solver infrastructure, with Ethereum full nodes. And we're looking very actively at the research that's coming out of the Flashbots team around Geth MEV, where basically the full nodes themselves have a understanding of how minor extractable value can be captured. And so just in a faraway future, you could imagine that a solver is running as part of an Ethereum full node, and the transaction is not actually submitted via the traditional peer-to-peer network in a and visible to other front runners, but it's actually part of the first transaction in the block. Just solves whatever has been submitted to Gnosis Protocol as part of a tighter Ethereum integration.
Do you need miner collaboration in this case? Like if you flash bots, full node, solver, and miners.
Right. I think there's multiple. I mean, this is nothing that we're looking at concretely right now. Just to give a very first proof of concept would be, instead of solvers submitting the solution via the normal Ethereum protocol, they could use MEV Geth, for example. They could build on top of MEV Geth and submit it as an MEV Geth kind of transaction. So, but yeah, ultimately, if you wanted the tightest coupling or the tightest integration, then you would include it in the mining software. So let's say Open Ethereum would have a module that allows you to become a Gnosis Protocol solver if you enable it.
Is it possible to have positive slippage for solver? Like 1inch protocol have this issue. They are in 1inch extract positive slippage for 1inch DAO. In case of Gnosis Protocol v2, is it a positive slippage issue exist or no?
It exists. We are not planning to capture it the same way as 1inch is planning or is capturing it, because in the same way that there will be positive slippage, there may also be negative slippage. And so we kind of assume that our settlement contract will have to build up a certain kind of form of buffer, as we call it, basically some rainy day fund for negative slippage. And basically positive slippage would also contribute to that fund. And then it still remains to be seen if we can structurally harvest more positive slippage than negative slippage, what we do with it. But right now, because we have a more kind of transparent business model in a way that we charge a fee, right now we don't plan on using the positive slippage as a hidden fee mechanism.
Who control positive this fund? Is it under GnosisDAO control or solver control? Who is control the case of this account with this fund?
So ultimately, it's under the DAO's control, and likely the GnosisDAO may be a Gnosis Protocol specific DAO, but the DAO controls kind of what happens with the funds. Conceptually, any solver has access to the funds because as a solver, you can execute arbitrary interactions in the context of the Gnosis Protocol settlement contract. You could theoretically basically steal the rainy day fund or steal the fees that have been accrued over time. So that is also another reason why we are thinking about the staking possibility. Basically making sure that whatever you stake is much larger than the potential damage you can do to the protocol. So basically the fees or this rainy day fund would have to be significantly smaller than the amount that a solver would be required to stake.
So to be a solver, it's like to buy a license to Gnosis Protocol. It's very important to have good solvers, like not.
You have to put up a deposit for sure. I'm not sure if we would just. You're tapping into an area where we're also not super clear yet. I guess it would be possible to charge a solver for just having a seat at the table. We for sure need a deposit, but just the seat at the table could be potentially free, and basically we incentivize them by giving them as much fees as they generate good solutions.
Okay, come back to main team Gnosis Protocol with.
But I wouldn't categorize it as a license, because that means that one is in charge of giving the permission of that license. In this sense, it would be like if you fulfill certain requirements of conditions, as long as those are okay, automatically you can become a solver. So like a little bit like in a way like any. Like MakerDAO, you know, as long as you put the collateral, automatically you have the collateral take position. You don't need the approval or permission or special license from someone else.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Cool. Okay, I guess let's ramp this up. But thanks so much, everyone. We really appreciate everyone who took the time out to join this call. We will also publish, we took a recording, so we will also publish that. If anyone wants to double check on a question, they can do this. Also, again, we welcome everyone to post any questions, criticism, or feedback or ideas into the Gnosis forum. We linked it up here in the chat, and we also basically just visit the Gnosis forum. You will see the GnosisDAO, and there is a proposal about this specific DEX, and there's quite a good discussion already going on. And yeah, it would be great if more of you would also participate with feedback on this process. Then yeah, let's wrap this up. We will probably have another call in a couple of weeks with more new content, maybe also including potential incentive schemes. Anyways, we will keep you posted about the next agenda for the next call, and hope to see you there again.